You're all welcome to Live and Thrive, and I'm here with Tony. We've been talking about the skills required to live a more purposeful life. And last week, we talked about the skill of negotiation. Today, we are going to look at the skill of conflict management. So, Tony, can we understand what conflict means?
Yeah, thank you so much. Incidentally, almost every human being who has reached some sort of maturity will tell you that he has been involved in many conflicts. So clearly, uh, let's try and understand what this is. In the course of operating with each other, that we are bound to have a difference in opinion, a difference in the way we view certain things, the way we think it should be done or what should even be done, what we think is required in situations. Even our principles may be incompatible. So when those sort of things happen, we could have a conflict. Let me underscore this by explaining the process of conflicts. Usually there's a premise or a latent conflict that's already there. It could be you don't like noise, for example. Then, based on that latent situation, there will be the next step, what I'll call a trigger. So a trigger is something that, actually actuates that conflict mindset. And then that now moves you to the next level, which is where the actual conflict takes place. And after the conflict will be a sort of a new equilibrium between the parties involved in that conflict. A conflict could be between persons, it could be between groups, it could even be internal, that is you conflicted. When somebody says I'm conflicted, it means he's fighting inside himself against maybe two opposite ideas. Like, for example, you feel you hurt somebody, one part of you says apologize to him, another part of you says, look, you actually retaliated, so why do you have to apologize to him? So inside you are actually conflicted as well. So essentially, that's what a conflict is. And in most conflicts, you see the rivals expending energy trying to either stop the other party or damage them even, and those are the features of what a conflict is.
Those are the features of conflict. So we're in constant contact and we'll never ever see things the same way. So can we dig deeper into the things that really causes conflicts between people?
Yeah. As human beings, if long and short of it is, if you look at all your purpose and goals, it's either because you want to feel security, feel safe, be well respected or valued, and also to have intimate and meaningful relationships. So where there is a conflict or there is failure to have an agreement with some other party, this is where the conflict happens. So what are the other things that can really cause it? Well, if you dig deeper, one of them is poor communication. I'm sure you have seen many cases where somebody failed to appropriately state how they feel about something, and it leads the other party to think it's something else, and it now goes to that trigger mode and the conflict ensues. Of course, original cause of conflict is where we have incompatible goals. If a parent, for example, has a goal of securing his child or a child, and the child has the goal of going to explore the world, these two interests could conflict because the parent will be trying to keep the child from going out, and the child wants to go out. So that is one of the most veritable causes of conflict. Or even if you're an employer of labor, you are thinking of making your business succeed, and one of the biggest costs to your business is your labor costs. And the guy who's providing labor wants to collect as much benefits as possible. So you are going to have a tension between those two, which could become a conflict if it's not well managed. One other source of conflict that is very interesting is resource allocation. People who live in countries that are resource rich always experience this. Like Nigeria, for example, that has oil. You have people from all sides scrambling to take their bigger share of that oil than others. So those are some of the causes of conflicts.
You talked about if it's not well managed. You said something like if it's not well managed. So what could possibly happen if you don't manage conflicts well?
Well, conflicts can lead to failure to meet goals. Don't forget that our initial plan is to try and achieve a purpose in life.
Yes.
So a conflict could prevent you from achieving those goals. It could lead to loss of assets, you know, especially lives. There have been conflicts that have resulted in loss of lives. Conflicts can also cause bad relationships if it's not well managed. You know, a husband and wife, wife wants something, husband wants another thing. And because they don't work it out properly, it leads to a very unhealthy relationship between them. That probably accounts for the huge rates of divorce that we have in society today, mostly because of poor conflict management. And at the end of the day, there are usually no winners if the conflict is poorly managed. But if you manage a conflict well, good things can happen. Because one of the usual outcomes of a good conflict, or a well-managed conflict, should I say, is that both parties come out of it. Don't forget that we said after the conflict, there will be a new equilibrium.
Yeah.
So they would now achieve a new equilibrium where they have respect for each other because they know, I'll be stepping on that person's toes if I did this. And the other person now knows that, oh, I would not do that too, so that I don't step on the other party's toes. And the rivals have mutual respect for each other. And that improves the way they communicate with each other. And oftentimes they're even able to collaborate and work together for better good of both parties to even achieve their goals better. So clearly, conflicts should not be avoided, but we should do things necessary to make them improve our general lives.
Wow. You know why this is so good? What you are talking about this afternoon. You talked about marriage, and you talked about the fact that a lot of marriages collapse because people are not able to manage conflicts. I reckon that people come from different backgrounds, and therefore there will always be conflict. And it's very important to be able to manage this conflict, because a lot of marriages that should have been amazing end up falling apart because people don't understand what we are talking about today. So I'd like to ask, how then can we manage conflict? Because you say if it's well managed, yeah, there'll be better results.
Yeah, this is where we get to the exciting part. But for us to know how to manage conflicts, it's good to think about people's approaches to conflict, because people have different approaches. There's a theory that I'm particularly excited about. It's called the dual concern theory. And this is how it works. It's just simply a 4-option theory. Dual concern means how much concern do you have for yourself or for the other party? So there are those who use what I call the forcers. Those forcers are concerned only about themselves. In a conflict, they're not concerned about the other party. They are the avoiders. The avoiders don't show concern for any of the two parties. They just assume that life will manage somehow, even if we don't do anything. Then there are the yielders. The yielders are those that have more concern for others than themselves. Finally, there are what I call the problem solvers. So the problem solvers are those that are thinking about the other party as well as themselves in a conflict situation. So clearly, of all these four groups, the right one to use depends on the magnitude of conflict and how it could impact your goal and the relative role of the two players, the power balance between the two players. Imagine Mike Tyson stepped on your toe and you now punch him in the face as your response. You are likely to lose that battle. So your approach to managing that situation will be different from if you were, say, a class teacher and there is a child in your class that misbehaves. You know, you have more power. So that conflict is the way you approach it will also will differ. So clearly the best approach for all conflicts should not be the same because it is situational. The way you manage a conflict depends on the type of conflict and its importance to you. If, for example, something happens and it's going to delay you just 2 minutes, say, which probably doesn't affect your time of reaching where you're going, you don't stop to fight. That might take you another 10 minutes longer than that delay. So in such a situation, you avoid the conflict and just wait the 2 minutes and go on with your life. So the way you solve, you manage a conflict depends on the situation. But there are general principles to also adopt when you're managing a conflict. The first and most important thing is to remember your goal. What is my big objective in this situation? Because if you stay focused on your high-level goals, you are likely to not waste energy on unimportant situations. Then the next step is to understand the source of the conflict. You see, imagine you stand up in a movie theater and the guy behind you shouts at you, "Hey, idiot." He didn't tell you the reason why he called you an idiot. But if you stop to find out and say, "Oh, you are obstructing my view," for example, then you have known the source of the conflict.
Yeah.
But imagine all you see is somebody calling you an idiot. You're not likely to manage that conflict properly. So clearly, we must always try to understand, okay, this guy seems to have a different opinion from me. Let me try to understand why it's a different opinion. Don't forget, the solution may not be to make him see it your way. It may be for you to understand his own way so you can work out something that will be mutually agreeable. You must always be flexible when you're managing conflicts because what worked with Mr. A may not work with Mr. B. Don't forget, people have different response styles in conflict situations. One other thing I've noticed about conflict is this thing they call retaliation. If Mr. A goes and hurts Mr. B makes up his mind, I must hurt Mr. A back. And often leads to a cycle of retaliations. Mr. A will now go on and do his own. One of the key ways of resolving it is to actually try to stop that cycle of revenge and go for a sort of a settlement. One of the ways you can do that, if you find that you cannot manage it yourself, is to get good help. The operative word here is good, because not all people that come to stop a fight are good at that job. So you can get a special mediation or mediator, or a conciliator, or an arbitrator. That's why people take matters to court. It's usually to resolve a conflict, because you couldn't just stand in front of each other's and box yourself to see who wins the fight, and that's the way of resolving the issue. You take the person to court and let the court decide on the best way forward from there. So these are some of the ways. But one of the most important ways, don't forget one thing: there's nothing you can do well if you don't learn how to do it the proper way. So you need to build some of the skills that will help with better conflict management. Skill building is very crucial in almost every endeavor in life. So in this field as well, to manage conflict better, you need to build skills.
Wow, thank you so much. Very important to build skills, because you said now that from what you said, I understand, yes, we need to be flexible and all that. But I also understand that choosing the path of least resistance may not always be the way to go. So I'd like to know, talking about skills, what skills do we need to, the particular skills that we need to build to help manage conflicts better?
You need a variety of skills, obviously, because, our ability to do things in life depend on the level at which we're able to figure things out. One important skill in conflict management is what I'll call emotional intelligence. It's a topic we are going to be treating very soon, along with many of these other topics. With emotional intelligence, you will learn to understand how you feel and how to understand other people's feelings and how to act in such a way as to optimize relationships with them. It has been said everywhere that emotionally intelligent people tend to be more successful in life than even the really smart people. If you think back to maybe your school days, you might find that the guy that always got the Fs and the low grades is probably the most successful human being of the lot. It's because maybe along the line, he learned to be more emotionally intelligent than others. Another important skill you need is negotiation skills. We discussed negotiations last week. So it's closely tied to being able to manage conflicts, because as a good negotiator, you are looking for the optimal outcomes in every engagement. It's not just about the price of things you want to buy. It's about even how you make other people feel and how you take on their own interests as well. Other skills you need will be things like critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, which are skills that we will discuss in future when we're discussing business skills, because these are skills that not just only help in business, but even help us in our daily life. A simple problem-solving skill, for example, could be that your car is not starting in the morning. You could approach it in many ways, but what if you discover that the reason your car is not starting is because there are many things that can go wrong, by the way. You could have your key, the static key of your car is damaged. There's something they call the Kickstarter. It could be damaged. It could be your battery that is low. So if solving problems, you need to know how to do it properly. Otherwise, you might spend the entire day or not even have the car at your disposal. So those are the kind of skills you will need to be a good conflict manager.
Wow, thank you so much. I don't know if you have final thoughts before I wrap this up.
Well, I'll just leave you with this question, I would say. Imagine this. If you had to choose between a doctor that prevents you from getting sick and a doctor that can save you from a critical illness, which one would you choose? Do you want to answer that?
I'll choose both. You need the two. You need the two. The one that will prevent you from getting sick and the one that will cure you if you, for whatever reason, get sick.
Exactly. So when you are thinking conflict management, it's also the same strategy. First, look at how to not go into the depth of it, but then you might also need to be able to solve it if it gets really bad. So that would be a wrap for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me do my own wrap. Yes, it's been so amazing today. Obviously, if we must succeed in life, achieve our goals, we need to learn to manage conflict, because we'll always be in contact with other people. Remember, we always say, you are not an island, you must relate with others. So I'll also leave you with my co-host's favorite quote here that says, if you don't end war, war will end you. Or let me say it the way it is exactly. Or do you want to say that quote? Explain that quote properly.
No, it's just simply that if we don't end war, war will end us.
End us, by Herbert G. Wells. Okay, that's a lovely quote. So I say, let the buck stop with you. It could be a roller skate. I mean, you want to get back at people, let the buck just stop with you. So stay tuned for the other skills that we are going to be talking about. Next week, we are looking at emotional intelligence, and thereafter, we'll talk about other skills. Thanks for showing up today. You can watch again and again. Have a blessed week. Bye.